Some connections begin softly and then grow into something you never meant to feel. What started as a simple kindness now becomes a shield, a stranger stepping between a maid and the cruelty she's learned to survive. Tonight, you'll see how the delivery guy she barely noticed becomes the one person she can't help but trust, and the one heart she never expected to depend on. Welcome back to Mr. David Stories, where emotions run deep and every quiet moment changes everything. And before we sink into this next chapter together, take a second to subscribe, like, and send your hypes. It keeps these stories alive, and it only takes a gentle flick of your finger. Now, lean in close, let your heart settle, and let's begin Episode 2. Morning crept into the mansion like a warning rather than a sunrise. The corridors were quieter than usual, not peaceful quiet, but the kind that hides whispers behind doors. By the time the maid stepped through the back entrance, she already felt it. Eyes, watching her, avoiding her, judging her. She tightened her apron, took a slow breath, and walked toward the kitchen. But the moment she entered, 2 staff members suddenly hushed their voices. Another turned away quickly, pretending to be busy. She sensed the shift immediately. Something had changed overnight, but she didn't know what. Not yet. She reached for a tray when the housekeeper, someone usually neutral, stepped forward with a stiff expression. "You should keep your head down today," the housekeeper whispered. The maid frowned. "Why?" The woman bit her lip, glancing around. "Because they're talking. About last night." Her heartbeat stumbled. "Talking about what?" "You and that delivery man," the housekeeper sighed. "The sister said she saw you getting close to him. Too close." The maid froze. "That's not what happened." "I know," the housekeeper said quietly. "But in this house, the truth isn't what matters." Her throat tightened. "What are they saying exactly?" The woman hesitated, then forced the words out. "That you were flirting with him, that you were doing it to get attention, maybe even money." The room spun for a moment. Flirting? Money? She had barely spoken to him, barely even breathed around him. The silence in the kitchen thickened. Someone snickered under their breath. Another shook their head like she should be ashamed. The maid lowered her gaze, her calm cracking. "I didn't do any of that." "I know," the housekeeper repeated softly. "But the more they talk, the more it spreads, and the lady of the house believes everything her sister says." Before the maid could respond, footsteps echoed sharply down the hall. The sister stepped into the kitchen, perfectly dressed, perfectly smug, with the satisfied smile of a woman who had started a fire and was warming her hands by it. "There she is," the sister announced loudly. "The little maid who thinks she can flirt her way into a better life." Every head turned. The maid's stomach dropped. "That's not true," she whispered. "Oh, please," the sister scoffed. "I saw you last night in the dining room, the way you were leaning toward him, the way he was looking at you." The maid's breath hitched. "I wasn't leaning—" "And him?" the sister cut in. "A delivery boy? Really? You're not even subtle." A few staff members laughed nervously. Heat rose in the maid's face, embarrassment, fear, humiliation. It mixed in her chest like something heavy she couldn't breathe through. Then, a voice from the doorway. "If you're going to accuse someone, at least tell the truth." The room froze. The maid's head snapped toward the voice. Adrian stood there quietly, cap low, hands in his pockets, gaze steady. But different this time. Not shy, not nervous, controlled. Watching the sister like someone who saw straight through her. The sister's face tightened. "Why are you here again?" "Forgot to pick up the return slip," he said simply. "But since you're talking about me, I figured I should listen." The staff exchanged looks. The sister folded her arms. "You shouldn't speak to me like you have any importance here." Adrian tilted his head slightly. "Considering you lied," he said softly, "I think I have enough importance to correct you." The kitchen collectively inhaled. The sister's eyes widened. "Lied?" "Yes," he said calmly, "because nothing you described happened. I was helping her pick up a tray. That's all." The maid blinked, shock mixing with something warmer, something safer, something she wasn't used to feeling. The sister stepped closer. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm calling your story wrong," Adrian replied, voice steady. "Maybe you misunderstood, or maybe you didn't." The sister's cheeks reddened. "You're bold for a man with a cheap uniform." Adrian's lips twitched, but he didn't rise to the insult. "And you're bold for someone who watched two people from the shadows," he said softly. "Next time, just ask." A stunned silence filled the kitchen. The sister looked like she wanted to slap him, but couldn't, not with staff watching. She turned sharply toward the maid. "This isn't over," she hissed. Then she stormed out. When she disappeared around the corner, the kitchen exhaled, whispers rising like smoke. The maid finally looked at Adrian. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Yes," he replied, "I did." For a moment they stood there, two people from different worlds, joined by a single truth. They were both becoming something to each other, something dangerous, something comforting, something they didn't yet have words for. The kitchen slowly returned to motion, but the energy had changed. Conversations became whispers. Glances became sharper, and everyone moved with the tension of people waiting for something to explode. The maid placed her hands on the counter to steady herself. The humiliation from the sister's accusations still burned under her skin, but the way Adrian defended her, that stayed too. Warm, confusing, dangerous. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so nobody else would hear. "You okay?" She nodded, though her eyes said she wasn't. I didn't expect her to twist things like that." "You didn't do anything wrong." "Sometimes that doesn't matter," she whispered. Before he could answer, heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. The husband. His presence pressed down on the room like extra weight. He walked in with a cold expression, looking straight at the maid. "You," he said sharply. "Come here." The staff froze. The maid swallowed hard, stepping toward him. "Yes, sir." He leaned in close enough that only she and Adrian could hear. "I heard about your little interaction with the delivery boy," he said, voice low and threatening. "I don't tolerate distraction in this house, or disobedience. I wasn't—" "Quiet," he snapped. Her lips shut instantly. Adrian clenched his fists, but held his position. The husband continued, voice calm but full of warning. "You will avoid unnecessary contact with outsiders while on duty. And if I catch you creating scenes again, there will be consequences." The maid nodded slowly. "I understand, sir." Adrian felt something in his chest twist. The man wasn't angry because of the rumor. He was angry because she drew attention. Attention meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant his secrets could crack open. And she was the easiest threat to silence. As the husband walked away, he muttered under his breath, "Useless girl." Something snapped in Adrian's jaw. The maid kept her head down until the husband's footsteps faded down the hall. Then she turned to leave the kitchen, needing air, needing space. Adrian followed, not too closely, but close enough she knew he was there. They stepped outside to the quiet garden walkway behind the mansion. The early breeze pressed softly against the leaves, carrying away the noise and cruelty of the house. She sat down on the stone step, hugging her arms around herself. "You shouldn't follow me," she whispered without looking at him. "Why not?" "Because they'll use it against me again." He sat beside her, a little distance between them, enough to respect her space, close enough to share the silence. "I won't let that happen." She let out a small, shaky laugh. "You keep saying that, but you're just a delivery guy. You can't protect me from this house." He turned his head toward her. "Maybe I'm not just what you think." She looked up slowly, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not when the danger around her was tightening. So he softened the truth. "I mean, I'm not afraid of them." She studied him, the calm in his voice, the warmth in his eyes, the steady way he held himself, despite being treated like nothing. "You talk like someone who's not supposed to be here," she whispered. "Maybe I talk like someone who sees what's happening and won't ignore it." A small silence stretched between them, softer, warmer than before. For the first time, she didn't hide her exhaustion. For the first time, he didn't hide how deeply he cared. Then, a sharp sound broke the moment, glass shattering. Someone yelling inside the house. The maid jolted upright. Adrian's posture straightened instantly. "What was that?" she whispered. He shook his head. "Trouble." They both stood, and as they walked back toward the house side by side, quiet, tense, connected, one thing was clear. The danger wasn't just starting, it had already begun. They reached the side entrance just as two staff members rushed by, whispering urgently. The maid grabbed one gently by the arm. "What happened?" she asked. The staff member hesitated, eyes flitting nervously between her and Adrian. "A serving tray fell in the dining room. Glass everywhere. The lady is furious." The maid's breath caught. She hadn't even been near the dining room today. But that didn't matter in this house. She stepped inside, Adrian quietly behind her. The hallway smelled of spilled wine and something sharper, panic. The dining room was a mess. Shattered wine glasses everywhere, a spilled bottle staining the expensive rug, the lady of the house standing in the middle of it all, red-faced with anger. When she saw the maid, she pointed sharply. "You!" she snapped. "Come here." The maid stepped forward cautiously. "Yes, ma'am?" The lady gestured at the broken glass. "Did you do this?" The maid blinked. "No, ma'am. I wasn't assigned here today." "Oh, really?" the lady hissed. "Because someone saw you carrying a tray earlier, and now this." "I didn't break anything," the maid repeated softly. "You're lying." Adrian stepped forward instinctively. "Ma'am, she—" "Stay out of this," the lady barked, her voice slicing through the room. "You've interfered enough." The maid lowered her head again, but this time there was something different in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also frustration, a quiet, heavy helplessness that Adrian could practically feel pressing against his chest. The lady crossed her arms. "Clean this mess, all of it, and do it fast. If a guest steps on a shard, it'll be your job on the line." The butler stepped closer, smirking. "Better hurry. The glass is sharp." Adrian stared at him, long, cold, steady. Something silent passed between them. The butler looked away first. The maid went down on her hands and knees, picking up the broken glass carefully. Her fingers trembled as she worked. Shards slipped, pricked her skin, but she didn't cry out. She simply kept going, the way someone does when life has taught them not to slow down for pain. Adrian crouched beside her. "You'll cut yourself," he whispered. "I'll be fine," she murmured. He picked up a large piece of glass before she could reach it. Their hands brushed, just barely. But the contact jolted her. She pulled back quickly, not out of discomfort, but out of fear someone would see. The lady turned sharply. "What are you doing?" she barked. "Helping," Adrian said calmly. "No, you're distracting her." "She's bleeding," he replied. The lady rolled her eyes. "It's just a scratch. She has 10 fingers." The maid lowered her gaze again. Adrian swallowed the anger rising in his chest. He wanted to shout, to tell the truth, to end the cruelty with one sentence: "I own this house." But that would end everything too soon. The maid gathered the last pieces of glass, her hands shaking visibly now. When she stood, her knees cracked slightly from kneeling on the hard floor too long. "Ma'am, the mess is cleared," she said softly. The lady eyed the spotless floor, clearly disappointed she couldn't complain further. "Good," she said. "Now scrub the rug. I don't want a single stain left." The maid nodded, grabbing a bucket and kneeling again. Adrian watched her bend down, watched the pain in her posture, watched her push through it with quiet resignation. This time he didn't stay silent. "This isn't right," he said softly, but loud enough for the lady and butler to hear. The butler scoffed. "You don't make the rules here." "No," Adrian replied, holding the butler's gaze. "But I know when someone's being targeted." The lady stiffened. "Are you accusing us of something?" Adrian didn't blink. "I'm saying she didn't break those glasses." The lady stepped closer, voice colder. "Then who did?" Without hesitation, Adrian answered, "Someone who wanted to blame her." Silence. Heavy, charged, uncomfortable. The lady drew herself up, her face tight with anger and something else, caution. "We don't need your opinion," she said. "And if you're not careful, you'll lose whatever job your little company gave you." Adrian held her gaze, unshaken. "I'll take my chances." The lady turned away sharply, heels clicking as she left the room, with the butler trailing behind her. The maid exhaled shakily, wiping sweat from her forehead. Adrian crouched next to her again. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. Then, in a soft whisper that trembled at the edges, she said, "I'm tired. Not of the work, not of the tasks, but of being the one the world blames." He reached for the bucket, gently taking it from her hands. "I'll help," he said. She looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time something in her eyes softened all the way. "Why?" she whispered. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. Instead, he gave her the truth she wasn't ready to understand. "Because you shouldn't carry everything alone." The rug had been scrubbed clean. The glass was gone. The dining room sparkled again. But the maid still sat on the floor, breathing slowly, her hands resting on her lap. Her fingers were red and raw from cleaning chemicals. Adrian sat beside her, the bucket between them, both of them hidden behind the long dining table. For the first time since he met her, she wasn't moving. She was just sitting, still, quiet, defeated. Adrian glanced at her hands. "You're hurt." She pulled her right hand away instinctively. "It's nothing." "You said that yesterday," he murmured gently. She didn't argue. She didn't lie. She just lowered her eyes. A silence settled around them, not awkward, not tense, but soft, heavy, like their pain understood each other. He waited, giving her space. Then she did something she'd never done before. She spoke. "I wasn't always like this," she whispered. "Quiet, careful. afraid of every shadow in a hallway. Adrian looked at her, surprised she would share this with him at all. She continued, voice low and steady. When my father died, everything fell apart. My mother did everything she could, but it wasn't enough. We lost the house. My sister and I were too young to work, but someone had to. So I learned to say yes to every job, no matter how they treated me. Her eyes glistened faintly. I learned that talking back gets you fired. Crying makes people angry. Asking for help makes you a problem, and problems get replaced. Adrian swallowed hard. Every sentence she spoke felt like a wound stitched together without anesthesia. I'm not here because I want to be, she said softly. I'm here because I have a little sister who needs me. And this house, pays more than anything else I've found. Adrian's voice came out low. You deserve better. She laughed, quietly, painfully. People like me don't get better. We just hope things don't get worse. He clenched his jaw. Because she was wrong. Because someone had taught her she was nothing when she was everything. He reached for her hand, slowly, gently, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Their fingers touched. A small touch, a quiet touch, but it held more emotion than anything spoken that day. And then a loud voice boomed from the hallway. What is this? The maid jerked her hand back instantly. Adrian stood, posture tightening as the husband appeared in the doorway. His eyes flicked from Adrian to the maid to the bucket beside them, and suspicion lit his face like a flame. You again, the husband growled. Why are you still in my house? Adrian kept his voice level. Cleaning, helping. Helping. The husband stepped closer, eyes narrowing. You're a delivery driver, not staff, not family, so tell me why you're always around my maid. She stood quickly. Sir, he just— Quiet, the husband snapped. Her mouth closed instantly. Adrian's eyes darkened, but he stayed still. The husband stepped closer, tilting his head as if studying Adrian. You talk like someone who doesn't understand his place. Adrian didn't blink. Maybe you talk like someone who's afraid of being exposed. The husband stiffened. A nerve hit. A truth brushed. Adrian stepped closer, just enough to turn the threat around without raising his voice. I've seen a lot in this house, he said softly. People shouting, blaming, hiding. Maybe be careful who you call out. The husband's fists clenched. He'd never been spoken to like this by someone he assumed was beneath him. You don't belong here, the husband said, and if you know what's good for you, you'll leave this house and never come back. Adrian smiled. But it wasn't warm. It's funny, he said. I was thinking the same thing about you. The husband froze. You have no idea who I am, Adrian murmured, and for a split second, the husband's confidence wavered. Just a flicker. Then he turned to the maid. If I see him near you again, you're out. Do you understand? Her eyes widened in fear. Sir, please. I said, do you understand? She swallowed. Yes. The husband stormed out, leaving the two of them standing in the silent dining room, their breaths shaky for two very different reasons. The maid looked at Adrian, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did you say that to him? He'll punish me for it. Adrian looked at her, really looked, and said the most dangerous thing so far. I'm not afraid of him. She stared at him, heart pounding, eyes searching for something she didn't have the courage to name. You don't talk like a delivery guy, she whispered. He stepped closer, slowly, gently, and for the first time his voice softened in a way he couldn't take back. And you don't deserve the life they're forcing you to live. Her breath caught. The room felt smaller. Their connection felt sharper. Before either of them could speak again, a soft creak echoed from the hallway. Someone was watching. Someone else had seen them. And episode 2 shifted into something deeper, darker, and far more dangerous. A floorboard creaked, soft, quick, deliberate. Both of them turned. At the far end of the hallway, half hidden behind the wall, stood the last person neither of them wanted watching. The sister. Her expression wasn't surprise. It wasn't confusion. It was something far more dangerous. Satisfaction. She smiled slowly, like someone who had just found the perfect weapon and couldn't wait to use it. The maid felt her stomach drop. Adrian felt the tension in the air sharpen like a blade. The sister stepped fully into view, arms folded, voice sweet enough to poison. "Well," she said lightly, "isn't this interesting?" The maid shook her head quickly. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh, please," the sister cut in. "I've seen enough." She turned her eyes to Adrian, scanning him like a threat she finally understood wasn't temporary. "You don't know your place," she said to him. "Men like you shouldn't get too comfortable around our staff." Adrian met her gaze calmly. "Men like me?" "Yes," she sneered. "Delivery men, workers. People who come and go, not people who belong inside this house." Adrian's jaw tightened. She turned to the maid, smile thinning into a cruel smirk. "And you're getting bold." The maid's breath caught. "Ma'am, I wasn't—" "Hush," the sister hissed. "Don't speak unless spoken to." The maid's eyes dropped instantly, a reflex she hated but couldn't stop. Adrian stepped half a pace forward, instinctively protective. "She didn't do anything wrong." The sister's expression darkened. "You're awfully comfortable speaking for her." "I'm speaking for the truth." "Truth?" She laughed softly. "The truth is, I saw you two getting far too close, and I'm sure my sister will love hearing every detail." The maid froze. "Please don't lie," she whispered. "Please don't do this to me." The sister leaned forward, voice a cold whisper dripping with amusement. "You think begging will save you? It won't. You've already overstayed your welcome." The maid's breath trembled, and then Adrian stepped forward, voice dropping to a tone the sister wasn't prepared for. "Be careful," she blinked. "What did you just say?" "Be careful," he repeated softly, "because the story you tell might come back to you." The sister's smile faltered, just a flicker. She opened her mouth, but Adrian stepped closer, his height overshadowing hers, just enough to shift the energy without raising his voice. "I'm not someone you should lie about," he said. The sister scoffed, recovering. "You? Who exactly are you?" Adrian inhaled slowly. For a second, just 1 second, he almost told her, almost said the name, almost broke the entire disguise. The maid watched him, eyes widening as if she sensed something she wasn't supposed to. Adrian caught himself. The truth sat too close to the surface. He swallowed it back down. "I'm someone who doesn't like seeing innocent people get punished," he said instead. The sister's interest sharpened. "Innocent? She's far from that." He stepped between them, blocking the maid from her. "You want to accuse someone?" His voice softened, but the threat beneath was unmistakable. "Accuse me, not her." The maid's eyes snapped up to him, shock written across her face. The sister studied him slowly, his posture, his calmness, the quiet authority he carried without trying. "You talk like you own the place," she whispered. Adrian didn't blink. "Maybe I talk like someone who sees everything," he replied. A chill slid down the sister's spine, just enough to show in her eyes. But she recovered fast, masking it with a smug smile. "This will be fun," she murmured. "Let's see how the lady of the house reacts to this little scene." Then she turned and walked away, each step echoing like the ticking of a clock counting down to disaster. The maid covered her face with both hands, voice cracking. "This is bad," she whispered. "She's going to twist everything." Adrian's voice was firm. "Let her try." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You don't understand what she can do." "I don't care what she can do," Adrian replied. "I won't let them destroy you." She stared at him, really stared, like she finally saw something she had only felt until now. Not kindness, not protection, power. Real power. The kind a delivery man shouldn't have. The kind that didn't match his uniform or his silence. Her voice softened. Barely a whisper. "Who are you? Really?" Adrian inhaled. Danger flared between them, and he said the only thing he could say without shattering everything. "Someone who's not going anywhere." Her breath shivered, not from fear but from something she wasn't ready to name. The sister didn't waste a second. By the time Adrian and the maid returned to the hallway, her sharp heels were already clicking toward the ladies' private lounge, the one room no staff dared to enter without being summoned. The maid stopped walking, dread falling over her like a heavy coat. "She's going to twist everything," she whispered. "She always does." Adrian watched the sister disappear behind the lounge door. "Let her talk," he said softly. She shook her head. "You don't understand. She lies, and they believe her. She destroys people because she's bored. She ruined 2 staff members last year. They didn't even do anything." Adrian's jaw tightened. "And now she wants to ruin you." "No," the maid whispered. "Not wants to. She enjoys it." Before he could answer, the lounge door opened again. The sister stepped out wearing a victorious smile, the kind that said the damage was already done. The maid flinched. The sister didn't even look at them as she passed, only said, "She's waiting for you." The maid's heart dropped. Adrian stepped closer instinctively. "Where?" he asked. "In the drawing room," the sister said with a grin. "Try not to cry too much. It stains the carpet." She walked away, humming. The maid exhaled shakily. "This is a trap," she whispered. "She made up something big." Adrian placed a steady hand near her elbow, not touching, just there, solid, warm, present. "I'll go with you." She shook her head quickly. "No, if they see you, it'll make things worse." "If I'm not there," he said, "you'll be alone." She lowered her gaze. "I'm always alone." He didn't let that go. "Not any more." She swallowed, her throat tight. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. Not in any home, job, or place she'd ever survived. As they approached the drawing room, the air grew colder. The lady's voice could be heard through the door, sharp, angry, winding itself up for a performance. The maid paused. "Please don't say anything," she whispered. "They'll fire me. Or worse." Adrian studied her face and realized something painful. She wasn't afraid of losing the job alone. She was afraid of losing the little she had left. He nodded once. "I won't speak unless I have to." She took a small breath. A brave one. Then she pushed the door open. Inside, the lady stood with her arms crossed, her face pale and furious. Next to her stood the butler, smirking, and behind him, the husband, leaning against the fireplace, swirling a drink, watching everything with calculating eyes. The maid stepped inside slowly. "Ma'am," she said softly. "Close the door," the lady snapped. The maid obeyed. Adrian remained just outside, hidden around the corner, listening through the slight crack. The lady began. "I have been informed," she said coldly, "that you were seen in a compromising position with the delivery man." The maid's chest tightened. "Ma'am, that's not—" "Do not interrupt me," the lady barked. The maid flinched. The lady continued, voice dripping with anger and humiliation. "First, you embarrass my guests. Then you argue with my sister. And now you are forming inappropriate connections with outside staff under my roof." The butler chimed in. "Her behavior has been questionable for a while." The lady nodded. "Exactly." The maid shook her head. "I've never—" "Silence," the lady said. Adrian clenched his fists outside. The lady stepped closer, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You are here to work, not to flirt, not to manipulate, and certainly not to bring scandal into my home." The maid's voice trembled. "I wasn't doing any of that." "Then explain," the lady said with fake sweetness. "Why were you hiding in the dining room with him? Why were you alone with him again today? Why is this becoming a pattern?" The maid blinked. Hiding? Pattern? The sister had told a full story, one big enough to destroy her. Before she could defend herself, the lady dropped the final blow. "My sister says you were seen with your hand in his, in my house, on my carpet." The maid gasped. "That's not— It doesn't matter what you say," the lady said. "Your actions speak louder." The butler smirked. "We all saw how comfortable you've become." The maid felt her chest collapse. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't defend herself. Every word twisted into a knife. And Adrian had heard enough. He stepped into the doorway before he could stop himself. That's not what happened. The entire room turned. Shock, silence, wide eyes. The maid whispered, terrified, "Adrian, no." But he had already crossed the threshold. The lady glared at him. "You again! I should have known you'd be involved." He stepped forward slowly, controlled, calm, but the tension under his skin was unmistakable. "You're punishing her for something she didn't do," he said softly. The husband scoffed. "You're out of line." "Maybe you should worry less about your staff," Adrian replied, "and more about your missing money." The husband stiffened. The butler choked. The lady's eyes widened. The maid gasped silently. Adrian froze. He hadn't meant to say that. He hadn't planned to reveal anything. But the truth slipped. Because of her. Because he couldn't watch them crush her anymore. The husband stepped forward, voice low and deadly. "How do you know about that?" Adrian swallowed slowly, restoring his disguise, his voice steady. "I hear things. I see things." The lady narrowed her eyes. "You know too much for a delivery boy." Adrian held her gaze. "Maybe I'm more than that." A chill ran through the room. For a moment, a dangerous moment, the truth hung in the air between them. The maid watched him with wide eyes, not afraid, but realizing something. He wasn't who he claimed to be, not even close. Silence gripped the room, a thick, dangerous silence, the kind that comes right before something breaks. The lady stared at Adrian with narrowed eyes. The husband stared with rising fury. The maid stared with fear. And something else. Realization. Adrian wasn't who he said he was. Not even close. The lady spoke first. "You seem to know far too much for a man who brings boxes to my door." Adrian didn't move. "Maybe I pay attention." "Or," the lady said slowly, "maybe you're not a delivery man at all." The maid's breath hitched. Adrian stayed still, carefully measuring every word he didn't say. His disguise sat on a thin thread. threatening to snap with one wrong look. The husband stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "You've been snooping, listening, sneaking around my house." Adrian held his gaze, steady as steel. "I walk where you ask me to walk. I see what you choose to ignore." The husband's eyes flared with rage. "You think you can threaten me?" "I'm stating facts," Adrian said. The lady's voice sharpened like a knife. "Enough." She turned to the maid. "You've brought nothing but trouble into this home." The maid's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I haven't—" "You have embarrassed our family. You have distracted our staff. You have engaged in inappropriate behavior with an outsider. And now—" She shot Adrian a poisonous glare. "You've given this man the confidence to disrespect us." The maid shook her head quickly, panicked. "Ma'am, please, you are no longer allowed inside the main living areas," the lady snapped. "From now on, you will work only in the basement laundry until I decide otherwise." The maid froze. Basement work was a punishment. Isolation, no windows, no breaks, 8-hour shifts of chemical fumes and scorching machines. It was the place staff were sent before being fired. The maid's voice trembled. "Ma'am, please don't do this." "You should have thought about that before sneaking around with him." Adrian stepped forward instinctively. "She didn't sneak around with me." The lady turned sharply. "You don't speak." He didn't stop. "You're punishing her for your sister's lies and your husband's guilt." The butler's face drained of color. The husband's hand tightened around his glass. The lady's eyes went cold. "Get him out of here," she ordered. The butler rushed toward Adrian. The maid gasped. "No, wait, please." Adrian held up a hand, stopping the butler mid-step with nothing but a calm stare. "I'm leaving," Adrian said softly, "but she comes with me." The room froze. The maid's heart stopped. "No," she whispered. "You can't—" Adrian continued, voice like quiet thunder. "She's not staying here." The lady stepped forward, fury shaking her voice. "Who do you think you are?" Adrian exhaled slowly, and for one terrifying moment, he nearly said his real name. The husband saw the shift, the posture, the tone, the authority. "You're hiding something," he whispered. "You're not a delivery man." Adrian didn't answer, because the truth was pressing against his tongue, begging to be freed. "I'm someone who won't let you destroy her," he finally said. The lady scoffed. "She's not going anywhere. She works for us." "Not anymore." Every head snapped toward him. The maid stared at him, breathless, shaking. He hadn't technically revealed anything, but he had just said something only a man with power would dare say. "You don't get to make that decision," the lady hissed. Adrian stepped closer, voice dropping to a quiet, dangerous tone. "I do." The temperature in the room shifted. Even the husband felt it, even the butler, even the sister, who had returned silently to the doorway. Something about the way Adrian stood, the confidence, the calm authority, the unbothered defiance, didn't belong to a delivery driver. He was someone they should fear. Someone with weight, someone with power, someone with a name they hadn't heard yet. The maid finally breathed out, voice trembling. "Adrian, please, you're making it worse." He turned slightly toward her, eyes softening for the first time. "I'm not letting them break you." The lady snapped. "Get out, both of you, before I call the police." Adrian nodded slowly. "Fine." Then he turned to the maid. "Come with me." Her knees nearly buckled. She wasn't ready. She didn't understand. And she was terrified. I can't," she whispered. "I can't just walk out. My sister, my job. Everything depends on this. I'll lose everything." Adrian stepped closer. not touching, just standing in front of her, voice low, steady, full of something she'd never felt from anyone. "You won't lose anything. Not while I'm here." Her lips trembled. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, "but I know you're not a delivery guy." He held her gaze, and this time he didn't hide what was in his eyes: truth, power, and something dangerously close to affection. "You'll know everything soon," he murmured, "but right now, I need you to trust me." She swallowed hard, and before she could answer, a burst of footsteps interrupted them. The sister had gone upstairs, the butler rushed after her, the husband stormed toward the office, and the lady called out sharply, "Security!" The moment shattered, the danger exploded, and episode 2 tilted into chaos. The word "security" echoed through the mansion like a siren. The air shifted, heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway, doors slammed, voices tightened with urgency. The maid froze where she stood. Adrian didn't. He stepped in front of her instinctively, his body becoming a barrier before the fear could swallow her whole. 2 security guards rounded the corner. Not the usual soft-spoken night guards, not the friendly ones who occasionally joked with staff. These were the daytime enforcers, silent, tall, trained to obey only the family's orders. One pointed. "That's him." The other looked at the maid. "And her." The maid's legs trembled. Adrian didn't move. The lady stepped forward, voice sharp, controlled, and hungry with victory. "Escort them out," she said coldly, "and make sure the girl doesn't return." The words hit the maid like a blow. She wasn't just being punished. She wasn't being disciplined. She was being erased. The maid whispered, barely audible, "No, please, not like this." Her breath broke. Her chest tightened. Her vision blurred. Everything she had, her job, her stability, her tiny income that kept her sister alive, it was slipping away. And all because she dared to be defended, dared to breathe near him, dared to be human. Adrian watched her crumble in front of him, and something inside him snapped. The first guard reached for her arm. Adrian reacted before he could think. He grabbed the guard's wrist, firm, controlled, unshakable. The guard's eyes widened. The lady gasped. The husband froze. The butler stumbled back. Adrian's voice dropped into a tone that did not belong to a delivery guy. "She's not going anywhere." The guard tried to pull away. He couldn't. Adrian's grip didn't budge. The maid stared at him, breathless, terrified, confused, overwhelmed. "Adrian," she whispered, "stop. Please, they'll hurt you." "No one's touching you," he said quietly. The second guard stepped forward. "Sir, release him or we'll remove you by force." Adrian turned his head slowly, meeting the guard's eyes. "Try." The room fell into a suffocating silence. The lady's face drained of color. The husband's anger flickered into something else, fear, because for the first time, Adrian didn't look like a worker, or a stranger, or someone beneath them. He looked like someone who owned the air they breathed, someone powerful, someone dangerous, someone used to being obeyed. The maid felt her knees weaken again, but this time for a different reason. This wasn't bravery. This wasn't kindness. This was authority. And she finally understood. He wasn't defending her because he was reckless. He was defending her because he could. He released the guard's wrist, not out of fear, but out of mercy. His voice fell into a warning that made everyone in the room shiver. "If any of you touch her again," he said softly, "you will regret it." The lady stuttered. You can't talk like that. You're just—" Adrian stepped forward. "No," he said, "I'm not. His disguise wavered. A fraction of his true presence leaked out, commanding, unmistakable, undeniable. The maid's lips parted as she whispered, "Who are you?" He turned toward her slowly, the truth burning behind his eyes, closer than ever. "I'll tell you soon," he murmured, "but right now—" He reached for her hand, hesitated for half a second, then took it firmly. Warm, protective, intentional. Her breath caught. Then he pulled her behind him gently, shielding her with his body as the guards hesitated, unsure, unsettled, and in the chaos. The husband shouted, "Stop them!" The sister shrieked, "Don't let them leave!" The lady screamed, "Do something!" But no one moved, because all of them, every guard, every servant, every watching pair of eyes, felt the shift. Adrian wasn't someone you touched. Adrian wasn't someone you ordered. Adrian wasn't someone you dismissed. And as he led the maid out of the room, hand in hand, her world collapsing, his identity slipping, one truth settled across the mansion like a storm cloud. Everything they thought they knew about him was a lie, and everything they feared was only just beginning. Adrian didn't look back. He guided her quickly down the hallway, his hand still wrapped around hers, not too tight, but with a certainty that told her he was leading her somewhere safe. Behind them, the mansion erupted into chaos. "Find them! They went that way! Check the courtyard! Lock the side exits!" Footsteps thundered across marble floors. Staff rushed in all directions. Security scrambled like they were chasing a ghost. But Adrian didn't slow down. He turned sharply down a servant corridor most people ignored, a narrow hallway lined with cleaning supplies, dusty cupboards, and old broken furniture. A place forgotten, a place where no one looked. He pulled her inside and shut the door quietly behind them. The moment the latch clicked, her legs gave out. She slid down the wall, covering her face with her hands, as everything crashed into her at once. The lies, the humiliation, the punishments, the glass incidents, the accusations, the threats, and now being dragged out like she was nothing. Her voice cracked. "I can't do this anymore. I can't." Adrian dropped to a crouch in front of her instantly. "Hey," he whispered, "look at me." She shook her head, tears spilling through her fingers. He gently reached for her wrists, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. He lowered her hands from her face. Her eyes glistened with a pain so deep it silenced him. "No one listens," she whispered. "No one believes me. No one cares what happens to me in that house. They just do whatever they want. And I have to take it because I need the job, because my sister needs me, because I don't have anyone." Her voice cracked again, softer this time. "I don't have anyone." Adrian felt the words hit him like a blade. He sat beside her, close enough for warmth, far enough not to overwhelm her. His voice softened into something she had never heard from him, or anyone. "You have me." She looked up, breathing unsteady. "You don't even know me," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "That's not true." She frowned through her tears. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly, the truth fighting beneath his tongue. "I know you work harder than anyone in that house. I know you don't cry until you're alone. I know you pretend to be strong because no one lets you be soft. I know you protect your sister even when you're breaking. I know you don't deserve what they've done to you." Her lips parted. He continued, his voice steady and low. "And I know that I'm not going to let anyone harm you. Not while I'm here, not while I can stop it." She swallowed hard. "Adrian, why are you doing this? You risked everything for me. I'll get you fired. I'll get you in trouble. You barely know me." His answer came without hesitation. You're the only part of this house that feels human." Her breath shivered. "And," he added, voice sinking even lower, "I can't watch you suffer." She looked at him differently then, not with confusion, not with fear, but with a dawning, fragile warmth. A warmth that scared her. A warmth that scared him more. Outside the hidden hallway, guards ran past, their radios crackling. "They're nowhere. Keep searching. Check the utility rooms. They couldn't have gone far." The maid stiffened. "They'll find us," she whispered. "No," he said. "Not here." He stood slowly and offered her his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His hand closed around hers with a softness she didn't expect. "Trust me," he said. "I'm trying," she whispered. As he helped her stand, her gaze fell on something she hadn't noticed before, something sticking out of his back pocket. A key card, shiny, metallic, black. Not the kind delivery drivers used, not the kind staff used, the kind only high-level management, or owners, carried. She looked up, startled. He saw her eyes dip toward it, and for the first time, panic flickered across his face. He quickly hid the card behind him. She stared at him, breath caught. "Adrian, what is that?" He hesitated. Too long. His heartbeat shifted. His breath changed. His entire posture hardened, not in anger, but in that instinct people have when their identity is inches from being exposed. Her voice softened. "You're not who you say you are." He didn't answer. Outside, the guard's footsteps grew louder again. Adrian grabbed her hand and pulled her deeper into the hidden corridor, whispering urgently, "I'll tell you everything, but not here, not yet." She let him guide her, shaken, confused, scared, but trusting him more than she should. And when he looked back at her over his shoulder, eyes fierce and protective, her heart made a quiet, dangerous decision. Whoever he really was, he had already become the safest part of her life. The hidden corridor led to a narrow service passage behind the laundry wall, dusty, dim, and rarely used. Adrian pulled her inside and closed the old door just as security footsteps pounded past. "Check the West Wing." "They're close." "Don't let them leave the property." Their voices echoed through the mansion like thunder. The maid pressed her back against the cold wall, her breaths coming fast. Adrian stood close, listening, calculating. His body was tense, ready, not like a worker hiding, but like a man who was used to being hunted and never lost. She whispered, "They're going to take me away. They'll drag me out. I can't lose this job, Adrian. I can't. My sister—" He stepped forward, cupping her elbows gently but firmly enough to steady her. "Look at me," he said softly. She lifted her eyes, trembling. "I'm not going to let them take you," he said. "You're not walking out of this house in shame, not while I'm breathing." Her eyes filled again, but this time not just from fear, from the way he spoke, the way he stood, the way he held her like the world couldn't touch her. She whispered, "Who are you?" He didn't answer, because footsteps stopped right outside the door. 2 guards. "Check this hallway," one said. Adrian reacted instantly. He pulled her behind a tall metal storage unit, shielding her with his entire body as the rusty doorknob rattled. Her breath hitched. He leaned in, his voice barely a whisper against her ear. "Don't move." The door creaked open. A beam of light swept into the room, landing inches from her shoes. One guard stepped inside, scanning, listening. Adrian held her tighter, his hand sliding gently around her back, not possessive, protective. His breath stayed steady. He wasn't afraid, because he knew something she didn't. The guard muttered, Empty. Let's go. The door closed. Their footsteps faded. She sagged against him, trembling with relief. Adrian didn't move. He let her breathe, let her steady herself, let her borrow his calm like a shield. But when she finally looked up, her voice shaking, she asked again, "Adrian, who are you really?" For a moment, one suspended heartbeat. He almost told her. Almost. His eyes softened, warm and pained. "You'll know soon," he whispered. "I promise." Before she could reply, the corridor lights flickered. A voice echoed through the PA speakers. "All staff report to the main foyer. Immediately." Her blood ran cold. "They're calling everyone," she said. "They're going to humiliate me in front of the whole house. They're going to say I—" "No," Adrian interrupted softly. "They won't." She looked at him, confused. "How do you know?" Because the storm had finally reached him. Because the family had pulled him too far. Because he had stayed quiet long enough. And because rescuing her as a delivery driver was no longer possible. Adrian stepped forward, quietly adjusting his jacket, wiping dust from his sleeves. And as he did, for one brief, unguarded moment, he looked exactly like a man used to wearing power on his skin. Not a worker, not a nobody, not a visitor. A man born to command. He reached for her hand again. She let him take it. "We're going," he said. "To the foyer?" she whispered. "Yes." "They'll see us." "Good." Fear and certainty crashed inside her. "Adrian, what are you going to do?" He looked down at her, eyes steady, voice calm, but carrying the weight of a truth she had yet to learn. End this. He opened the corridor door. The mansion's chaos waited on the other side. He stepped out with her beside him, united, exposed, unstoppable. Whatever happened next would destroy or protect. But one thing was certain. He would not let her stand alone. Not now, not ever. Love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it slips in through small moments, quiet defenses, and the warmth of someone who shows up when the world doesn't. But with every step closer he takes, the danger around her grows sharper, and the truth he hides becomes a storm waiting to break. Episode 3 is where everything shifts. The lies, the jealousy, the reveal. And the moment she realizes the man she's falling for is not who she thinks he is. Don't miss it.